it's a short letter. What we have is one chapter, Second John, and we've talked about the greeting and just the first part where John doesn't use his name. He just identifies himself as the elder, and he doesn't even identify the recipients of the letter. He just says, to the lady chosen by God and to her children. So, was that a specific woman, or was that symbolic? And I've said, I think he was kind of using code language for the church. And then he says, these to the lady chosen by God and to her children, whom I love in the truth. And we talked about the truth, but we have to kind of go back and replow a teeny bit of ground to realize that he's not just talking about a body of empirical truth. He's talking about the truth. Jesus said he was the way, the truth, and the life. And he further said, no one comes to the Father but by him. That's the truth John's talking about. Not only I, but all who know the truth. In other words, here's the thing. This is not just a small little community of people. It's not a club. This is a broad, huge family of believers, even in century 1. Now, there weren't as many people on the earth, number one, and so mathematically it would have been impossible to have millions upon millions of Christians in that on the face of the planet in century 1. And remember, John wrote this after 60 AD into the 70s somewhere, and the growth of the church, which began in about 33, so there had been, 30 or 35 years where the message and the impact of the church would have had a chance to go out. Spend a whole long time on that, but I'm not going to. Here's the thing. We are in a family that is much bigger than we can even imagine. There are people you'll never meet until you get to heaven who are part of this family. And I'm not even talking about those who have lived and died. I'm talking about those who are living right now. Not only I, but all who know the truth. We're in this one. Here's the basis of our connection is that we know the truth, and that bonds us together in this family. And then he goes on to say, because of the truth, right? Okay, which lives in us and will be with us forever. Now, it's because of this last little thing, who lives in us and will be with us forever, that I'm convinced John's not talking about the concept of truth. We're not talking about epistemology. We're talking about Jesus, who, again, is the way, the truth, and the life. And because we know him, and because he is an eternal presence for us, both now in time and once time ends, we step into eternity, he is in us and with us. We don't think about that enough. I'm convinced. I don't think about it enough. Most of the Christians I know don't think very often about the fact that Jesus, this truth, is in us. We often think about Jesus as external to us. It's a weird thing, and it bends my mind to realize that, yes, Jesus is with me, but he is in me. How's he in us? By his Spirit. God put his own Spirit in us. Now, I could go a day or so on that, but I think I already have, so I'm going to leave it at that. And then I just love what John writes next. He adds one word into it's kind of a prayer. It's something he desires for his family here. This is one of only, I think, 3 places in the New Testament it appears in this way. Paul, when he wrote his letters, he used a real similar kind of greeting. And so let's just read it. Verse 3, grace, mercy, and peace from God the Father and Jesus Christ, the Father's Son, will be with us in truth and love. Now, gosh, there's a bunch of stuff here, and can you believe it? I'm going to probably take at least 2 of our connected times to think about it out loud. Grace, mercy, and peace. Now, Paul, except in his letter to Timothy, says grace and peace to you. He begins his letters that way, and a few of them he ends with that same thing. Peter ended his letter with grace and peace. And I have this sense, I'm convicted of this and convinced that grace and peace are connected. And I think it works this way. We all are longing for peace. Everyone, even people who are pugnacious, even people who they stir up strife, they create controversy. Down in them, in the core of their being, one of the things they want is a sense of peace, a calm, settled peace. I think at the heart of that, every human being, even those who say they don't even believe in God, I think they have this longing for, this urge to experience peace with God. We like peace with other people, and now there are lots of different ways that we feel like we can achieve peace. One is to just beat them, right? We go to war and win, and then we have peace, which is true. If history tells me anything about that concept, it is that peace that we achieve by that means is pretty fragile. And it comes down to whoever is the strongest, has the best weapons and strategy, will win. And then there is peace, but peace will always be on the terms of the winner. Now down on a personal level, we sometimes that happens, right? In relationships, the dominant person in that constellation, whether it's 2 people or more, the dominant person establishes terms of peace, right? You do it my way. If we do it my way, everything's going to be fine, which feels like peace. Personally, in smaller relationships where it's just me and thee, I feel like the peace that is achieved through dominance is a real thin and usually a temporary peace. And there's always rebellion of some kind in that until the weaker individual just says, no mas. Either I give up, I surrender, or I'm gone. You're on your own. I see this all the time in my counseling, and especially in marriage counseling. See, what is peace? If peace is just the absence of conflict, then however you can make the conflict cease, that's what you do because you want to achieve peace, the absence of conflict. Does your life, like mine, teach you that that kind of peace is very tentative? It's fragile. It's temporary. What you think you've achieved in that kind of peace today can be gone by this evening. There's a different peace. There is a peace that is, and this is the peace that John is talking about, and Paul talked about, and Peter talked about, and Jesus talked about when he said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you." And then he goes on to say, excuse me, I don't think he cleared his throat, but he went on to say, "Not as the world gives, but I give you my peace." Well, okay, what is that? That has to do with a settled, sealed reconciliation with the source of our life. Peace, that kind of peace, can be present when there is external conflict all around. Occasionally you'll run into these people who, when the world seems like it's going to hell in a handbasket, that particular moment is a moment of terrible extremity, and yet they seem settled. They seem at peace. That's the kind of peace we're talking about. And where that peace comes from is not from my effort. It's not from my strategy. It's not from my dominance. It is given to me. And the vehicle through which it comes is grace. My theory is wherever grace shows up, peace can happen and will happen. Grace is God's agent. Grace is God's vehicle. Grace is God's tool to give us peace. And here's the ultimate peace, again, has to do with my sense that I am at peace with God. And the only thing that can create that situation for me is God's grace. My effort can't. My striving, my work, my obedience, and John's going to talk about that, but that's not what gains peace with God. I can't sustain my perfect obedience for... It's part of the dilemma, part of the curse is we are going to sin. And when we sin, how do we make it up to God so that peace can return? Well, it's not how it works. And I'm so grateful it's not how it works. It is God's grace given to us, not in spite of us and not because of us. It's all about Him. Grace assumes two things. It assumes the need of the recipient, you and me, and the sufficiency of the donor, God. Somehow God is able to satisfy Himself without us having to do all the effort and work in order to satisfy Him, because we're incapable of that. That's a deep, deep, deep pool. but I love it so much. And next time we're going to talk about mercy as well as grace and peace. But my time's up for now, so I'm going to close. And I will hope to connect again with you next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.